Here's part two on the Hundred Years' War. So originally, this is going to go really well for the English. They're going to have victories at Poitiers, Crécy, Agincourt. I know I'm not going to test you guys on that geography, but a lot of their success has to do with the longbow. So this had a longer range and could be used and reloaded much quicker than the crossbow, which was what most people used at the time. And it was a much stronger shaft, and so it could pierce most armor. Um, Pretty sort of early on in this war, it really seemed like England would conquer France, and Edward III died basically thinking that he had been successful in that. Um, However, things are reversed, fortunes change by an unlikely hero, a woman actually, a saint, Saint Joan of Arc. In 1427, a 17-year-old peasant told the king that God had sent her to lead French armies. And in 1 year, her victories plant the seeds for a future French victory. She most famously takes a city that was sort of the last city standing between the French and the English coming in and invading. They're invading Paris essentially. So we'll talk more about Joan of Arc, but her victories and her work ends up allowing the French to gain momentum and eventually are able to drive the British out of France. Um, the legacy of the war. So again, this war starts in 1337 with the death of the French king and ends in 1453. Are a couple things. So we're going to see a growing sense of nationalism. So yes, it existed, right? This idea that I am French or I am English, but that is going to continue to develop. Other European countries are going to start developing similarly. So not only is this a France and England thing, this is going to become a Spain thing, a Portugal thing. The only countries that are sort of lag behind are modern day Germany, which at the time was the Holy Roman Empire, and Italy. The second thing that's going to happen is this is going to set England and France on two different paths. So remember how I mentioned that both countries had a body, right, that allowed people to be a part of their government, right? So you had Parliament in England and you had the Estates General in France. What ends up happening is the French kings are seen as heroes after this war, and they're allowed to expand the power of the monarchy. On the flip side, the power in the English government swings towards Parliament because they have the power of the purse. Remember that according to the Magna Carta, the king could not raise taxes without the consent of Parliament. And so this is going to make it so that Parliament has a lot more power, right? Because money is power, like we said. And so that is going to become the more powerful part of the government in England is going to continue becoming more powerful. English rulers are going to start pursuing new trading adventures overseas and start expanding their navy, whereas France is going to end up sort of focusing more on themselves and building up the country within France. The third thing that we're going to see happen here are the emergence of new weapons. Sorry, just so you guys can see. So we're going to see the emergence of the longbow, right, which we already mentioned gave the English a huge edge over the French, but we're also going to see the emergence of gunpowder, which came from Asia and was something that the Chinese had been using for hundreds of years, but it finally makes its way through the trade routes to Europe. And so this changes the way that we fight wars, right? Castles are not efficient or sufficient, I should say, protection from gunpowder, right? And knights are no longer a good defense against gunpowder and bows, right? And so what we're going to see, instead of having individual knights, right, and sort of castle sieges, right, which just aren't possible with those two new weapons, we're going to need large armies, and we're going to have kings start sort of owning or controlling large armies and hiring soldiers for fighting, right? Which is sort of what we have today, right? We have a military. The U.S. has a military. That's going to begin after the 100 Years' War because of these changes in weapons. All right, so that's it for today. Again, make sure that you have these notes. Pause, rewatch the video, and that's what I'm going to be checking for in your OneNote. All right, talk to you later.